Imagine a Cuban pilot stealing a fighter jet and flying just 15 feet above the ocean to defect to the US. The Cuban government immediately used his wife and children as leverage to force him back. But what happened next was a move nobody saw coming. This pilot didn't just run away, he planned a daring rescue mission to go back and get his family. Back in March 1991, Major Orestes Lorenzo Perez was one of Cuba's most decorated pilots. Deep down, he was plotting his escape, but leaving his wife and kids behind was the hardest decision of his life. He decided his only shot was to defect first and then use international pressure to get them out. On March 20th, he said his goodbyes and climbed into a Soviet-made MiG-23. Under the guise of a routine training mission, he dropped to a dangerously low altitude, hugging the waves to stay under Cuban radar. He streaked north across the Florida Straits until he touched down at Naval Air Station Key West. Per diplomatic protocol, the jet was returned to Cuba, but Perez was granted political asylum in Alexandria, Virginia. He immediately began a massive campaign, petitioning U.S. officials and the UN while rallying over 50 members of Congress. His story went global, and even President George H.W. Bush gave a speech calling for the release of his family. But the Cuban government refused to budge and even tried to force his wife to publicly denounce him. A Cuban official taunted her, saying, "If your husband was brave enough to steal a plane, let's see if he's brave enough to come back and steal you." That insult planted a seed in Perez's mind. He realized no one was coming to save them, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. His strategy was the same, staying low to hide in the radar clutter, but this time, he was flying a small, twin-engine Cessna. Compared to a supersonic fighter jet, this thing was basically a toy. Before the mission, Perez had two brave volunteers sneak a handwritten note to his wife with the date and pickup coordinates. On the day of the flight, he landed on a narrow coastal road, and his wife and two sons sprinted into the plane. Without a second of hesitation, Perez slammed the throttle forward and took off again. The Cuban air defenses were on high alert, but Perez was flying so low to the water that their radar couldn't lock onto him. The cabin was dead silent, except for the roar of the engine. 45 minutes later, he crossed the 24th parallel into U.S. airspace and finally let out a breath. When the plane landed at Marathon Key, the media was already there waiting. After 21 months apart, the family of four was finally reunited, sharing a powerful embrace right there on the tarmac.